Shukran. Thank you. My name is Abdul Khaliq Abdullah, professor of political science at Emirates University. I want to go back to what Ahmed Zuhair said in the opening, on the opening session. I'm talking in English. You didn't need to translate.
He's talking in English, so you can remove your translation.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry I missed it.
It's okay.
No, it's okay. Okay,
My name is Abdul Khaliq Abdullah, professor of political science at Emirates University. I'm going back to Ahmed Zuhair's earlier comment in his opening statement when he made that distinction between news versus views. And I wanted to ask the question, when it comes to the New York Times, which one is more valued when it comes to readers and to the to New York Times? Do you put more emphasis nowadays on the views rather than the views, or the other way around? And I hope I don't get the standard answer. It's both. Do you see any shift towards one or the other? Is the opinion pages is the real heart of the New York Times, or is it the breaking news that you come up with some between now and then? That's my first question. My second question is, we have heard lately that the Newsweek is about to be sold and it's no longer a profitable project and it's going out of business more or less. Would you like to comment on the Newsweek and why did it did not pick the track and did not make the it's not making the businesses as credibly as it should? Now, the New York Times is known for the logo or the motto. We print, could you please move away a little? We print what is fit to print. Is that still the logo that you go by? This is something we hear that the New York Times go by. And sometimes in the Arab world, we use that as being some kind of, to indicate that even the New York Times does the self-censorship. How are we right in picking up that as meaning self-censorship that New York Times uses when it comes to things that it prints? Thank you very much.
I hope I'll get all three. The first question was news versus views. And you said you didn't want to hear both, which is part of the answer. The views on the editorial page of the New York Times are fundamentally important to the audience. The op-ed columnists who state their opinion, their view of the world, carry great weight and great importance, and it is a very important part of the news. In the rest of the paper, we try not to state opinion about what we think should happen, where we believe people are right or people are wrong. But what becomes very important is putting it in context. What does it mean? What's the value? What's the importance to me? How does it affect my life going forward as a businessman in the world, or as a father in the world, or as a citizen of the world, depending on the story? So what happens is more and more context goes into stories. And the importance of the fact is almost assumed, that people know the plane crashed, the debt was restructured, whatever the event is, and we go directly to the context, the meaning. Everyone who reads that carries their own point of view with them. So some read it in one way and say, well, they're leaning this way, others read it a different way. We try to go down the middle. So the views are very important, and the news needs to be much more in context and meaning. And that's the trend we see. Now, I think that relates directly to your question about Newsweek. A weekly magazine about news is a very hard thing to sustain today because the news cycle is immediate. Who's going to wait a week to read about the restructuring of the Greek debt? Who's going to wait a week to read about any event that happens? So the news weeklies that used to have a great advantage in that they could distribute worldwide over a period of a couple of days have found that advantage no longer works for them. And if we contrast Newsweek with The Economist, I think we'll see one of the important trends. The Economist calls itself a newspaper, but it comes out weekly, and from my perspective, it has a lot of attitude. When they report on an important issue, they will say what they think was right and what they think should be done. But they do it in a thoughtful way that many people value. So The Economist is rising in circulation, and from everything I read, it's rising in profitability, where most of the weekly magazines are having a very difficult time finding where they sit in a world of instant news. So I think what's happening is they're having a lot of trouble adapting, and they're going more to views and more to opinion because they're so far behind the news cycle on a weekly scale. And now I'm having trouble remembering your third question. What was it? Censorship. Thank you. The phrase, all the news that's fit to print, came from the New York Times from the new owner in 1896. And at that time, journalism in the United States was nothing like it is today. There were many, many newspapers, and they all had an extremely strong point of view. And what that was meant to say then was that this newspaper would not be sensational. It would not report simply on scandal and murder and mayhem, but was going to take a more learned approach, if you will. We carry that line today because of its tradition and its history, that we are trying to give you a complete report in a way that all levels of society and all ages can read. Now, the important part of your question is about self-censorship. And I would first draw a distinction between self-censorship and editing. We edit the news. Most of the news we do not report, simply because we can't, but also because it's not our niche. Our niche is to be very strong on international news, on national news, on cultural news, on economics, on business, and sports, and the events of the day. So we edit all the time. Now, to what degree do we self-censor? I think that's an important question for everyone and in all parts of the world. And our approach, and particularly with the International Herald Tribune, is that we try very hard not to self-censor ourselves. We know, because we distribute throughout the world, that there are places where particular stories are not welcome, and where governments will step in and say, you cannot distribute that story in this country. And we have made the conscious decision that we will not make that decision. We will not limit our report in order to distribute. And if a country stops us for a day, we accept that. We have no choice. It comes with being a global newspaper. But I think if I can be bold enough to tread into an important and sensitive subject, I think there is more censorship in the media across the world that comes from self-censorship than there is that comes from government censorship. And I don't want to downplay the importance of, or the impact of government censorship. I'm an American. I come with an American perspective about the media and the First Amendment. So we believe in the free flow of information. We think it's been very good for the United States, for its economy, for its politics, for everything. But there are parts of the world that have a very different belief.